previous videos, we learned the principles of drawing ducts. Now we want to know, in case we have a structure of some sort and we want to model a canal and fix those interferences, how can we do that? So we go to the Systems tab and select the Duct command, and then we go to the Properties window and select our type, and then we go and enter our dimensions, for example 800 millimeters and 500 millimeters. And then for the elevation, for example, we're going to enter 3,600. And remember, our reference level is level 1. So now we're going to start drawing the duct. For example, it's crossing a path like this and then goes upwards, depending on the design or the plan that you have. Now let's get a section to see what happened. So we're going to go to the Quick Access toolbar and select the Section tool. Now the first click, and then we're going to move the mouse and the second click. We can use these arrows to shrink the section and say we only want this part to be in our section. And now to go into our section, we're going to right click and then click on Go to View. So now we can click on this section box and then use these small circles to drag it wider so we can also see level 1. Once it shows me the ducts by lines, that way we can know that our detail level is set on coarse, as in you can see the least amount of details. So we're going to set it on fine so we can see all parts of our duct. And we can even set it on shaded to see the duct even better. Now you can see that this duct that we drew is interfering one of the beams. This is just an example that doesn't even have a ceiling, and this duct may be very high, so we might want to lower it a little bit. But the point is that in this elevation, this duct is interfering this beam. So how can we fix this, or how can we change the elevation? This duct that we just drew, you can see that its elevation changed a little bit. So the axis is 3,440. Now we have multiple ways to solve this issue. But first let's delete this one and then draw another piece of duct over here. We go to Systems tab and Duct command. And you remember the elevation was 3,440. So the first click, we go before the beam, and as the Duct command is activated, we're going to change the elevation over here. For example, we're going to enter number 3000 and then we click. Now we're going to press the escape key to cancel the command. And now we're going to take this section and put it over here. Now let's go view this section 1. You can see that we changed the elevation from 3440 to 3000. And I didn't really know exactly what number to enter. I just put them by guess. So if it were lower, we could have selected the duct again and used the keyboard's arrow keys to move it higher or lower. Or in case it were too high and still interfering with the beam, we could have still used the arrows to move it lower. So because we don't know the exact elevations, the measuring may not be very precise. Now the second step, we right click and draw duct and set the elevation on 3440 and drag the duct a bit further. Now we press the escape key. Let's go view the section. This is what it looks like. So now we can select this part of the duct, as in its elbow. We can select it by dragging and use the keyboard arrows to move it to the left. As well as this side, we're going to select the elbow and the duct and use the arrows to drag this one to the left as well. You could end up with something like this if you want. Or even if needed, you can select this part and move it up. So now this duct that we just drew, how can we fix its interference with the beam? Let me drag the section again and put it onto this one, and then right click and go to View. Here you can see that the duct has been drawn and you can't delete it. So you're going to have to split these parts of the duct. So to split that, you can go to the Modify tab, and you can use the Split Element command. Do you see now? The mouse cursor now looks like a cutter. So now I'm going to go and click on here and split the duct up to this point. Now I'm going to press the Escape key to cancel it. So now that we use the split command, actually let me zoom in a bit. Can you see that a fitting has been created named Union? We've also previously mentioned that this is called a union, and in fact it's considered a fitting type. So now we're going to click and drag to select and delete this part and create this blank space. And now we're going to go to the duct and right click on it and click on Draw Duct. And because you can now control the angle, you can drag it downwards and click again to the right. And now the final part. You see, we don't need to connect this one to this already drawn duct. Even if we wanted to, you can see that this one is longer. So we might not end up with a correct drawing. Or even if we draw it a little before that, do you see this forbidden mark that appears? It's because you have no proper space to create the elbow. So we're going to drag it higher and click and press Escape. Now how can we connect these two to each other? We can use a command called Trim. Trim will actually connect two different items to one another and remove the extra parts. So we're going to go to Modify and select the Trim Extend to Corner command. Try to memorize its shortcut over here. It's TR. It's also very practical. So we click and we're going to click on this part of the duct that we want to remain, not up here. Now we're going to click here and on this part. And you can see the connection path is indicated by dashed lines. So we're going to click and they're now connected and the extra parts have been removed and a proper fitting has been applied. So now we press the Escape key. Now for example, we can take this and move it higher, or we can create the proper distance that we want. For example, we're going to drag this one to the right and this one to the left. Now let's see if we can drag this one higher. We will go as far as it goes. So now we're going to go back to the plan. Actually, let's go to a blank space because we want to discuss some things. So we're going to go to the Systems tab and activate the Duct command. And for example, enter number 500 for the width. And for the height, we're going to enter 300. And this is our fitting type and have 2000 elevation. And now click. We go a bit further and lower the elevation a little, for example 1900. And now we click again and Escape. Let's go get a section to see what happened. So there's the section. Let's shrink it a little bit so that we can only see this duct inside it. Now we right click and go to View. Now we're going to click on the box and drag it wider and set the detail level on Fine and Shade it. Now to view the plan and the section at the same time, we can go to the View tab and click on Tile Views, and then the screen will split into two like some tiles, and that way we can view both the section and the plan at the same time. Alright, because the distance was a little small, it couldn't even put an elbow, so it just used a transition and gave an offset shape to the duct. As in, it created a new fitting using that transition. It just couldn't use an elbow instead because in such a small space, no elbow can be applied. Now, let's drag the section a bit higher and press DT for the duct command. And we're going to click here. And now let me press Escape and set the elevation on 2000. And now click and click again. Now let's enter something higher, for example 1950. And now Escape. Now you see the distance here was so small that it couldn't even apply a fitting at all. It only distorted the lines, as you can see. we only have a slope now. Even if we click on it, we can see the measurement of the slope. Alright, now let's go take this section and drag it a bit wider again, and activate the duct command using its shortcut DT, and say we want to start from 2000. Then we click and click again, and now we're going to put 2500, and now click and press escape. Now as you can see, because we had the enough space, we have an elbow as well as a piece of duct in between, and as we click on the elbow, we can see that its angle is 45 degrees. Alright, now let's drag this section a little higher and enter DT, the duct command, and now starting from 2000 again. Now we click, and a little further, we change the elevation to, for example, 2200. And now click and we press escape. So now we're going to click on the elbow, but now you see that this time, depending on our elevation, you don't have a 45-degree elbow. The elbow that we have is in 22.5 degrees. Okay, now let's drag the section higher again. Now DT, the duct command, and starting from the 2000 elevation, we're going to click, and now we're going to go much higher, for example 3500, and now we click here and escape. Now you see it has enough space to apply 90-degree elbows. So as we change the elevation in our plan, and depending on the elevation that changes, we might end up seeing so many different shapes. As in, we might get 90-degree elbows, or 45-degree angles, or an elbow with a different angle. And we even see that this distance was so small that it couldn't even apply a fitting. It only distorted the duct, or it created an offset by itself. So it really depends on your elevation. Now, if we want this elbow angle and elevation to be under our control, it is best that we make this elevation change in section. So that's another thing. We're going to activate the duct command using DT. Actually, let me lower this section first. I'm going to drag it and put it over here. Now we're going to press DT for the duct command, and then click, and now click again, and now we want to move down vertically. We want to continue vertically from here on out. So we're going to set the elevation on 0, and click apply and do it again. Actually, the first time that we clicked on apply, applied the elevation, and the second time actually kind of paused that duct command. It's as if we had pressed the escape key. So you see it will go down like this vertically. For example, in case we want our duct to have a riser shape, we can use this method of changing elevations as well. As in, we wouldn't need to necessarily change the elevation and continue drawing the duct. Now, these points that we just mentioned about changing elevations is very useful for when you have a duct interfering something else, or you have multiple items at once. Sometimes you might need to split your duct in order to solve that interference. You might even need to change the elevation of some other items. But now, speaking about ducts, in case you have an interference with some facility items or something else, this is how you can change your elevation. In the future videos where we will be using examples and applying all of these information on projects, we will see how practical these elevation changes are.